Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Crypto Hipster podcast. This is your host, Shamil Hassan, the Crypto Hipster, where I bring you founders, entrepreneurs, executives, thought leaders, you name it, in the world of crypto and blockchain or all around the world. And I have an amazing guest. I always have amazing guests, but I'm really looking forward to this interview. Today, I have the distinguished Dr. Alan Tominey, Technical Director at Gorky. Dr. Tominey, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Let's kick things off, and I'll ask you the first question that I ask everybody, but because I'm really intrigued by your background, is what is your background, and is it a logical background for what you're doing now?
So my background, I've come from a science kind of area, all the way through engineering, and basically into kind of a computational, scientific computation background. And I kind of specialize in data science, artificial intelligence, but also into more classical kind of optimization algorithms, nonlinear optimization problems, and quite sort of reasonably serious mathematics. It's not quite up there with the kind of academic stuff, but it's pretty solid stuff. Yeah, to answer your second part of that question, I don't know if anyone really fits into the kind of fits into the Web3 world from the outside world. I think it's so different that it's nice to come in and take a fresh perspective into it, actually, from that world.
Very fresh perspective. So what kind of, like, if I follow up there, is what kind of algorithms have you built, and who's used your software over the years?
So I've come from the energy industry, so oil and gas, mainly, and that was part of my background, is to build, we would kind of call them digital twins, but they were not traditional kind of structural digital twins. They're based on kind of physics. So we built these platforms for the big oil and gas companies. I've worked in your Shells and Exxons and KOC. I've provided systems for large multinational companies on mainland US and all over the rest of the world. And basically what we did is we take physics-based modeling to, all the fluid and the complex thermodynamics that goes on in the wells and reservoirs, and capture that in a system. So there's a mathematical modeling side of that. And then also, typically after you've got it captured in a model, you'd want to optimize it in some way. You want to get more out, or, constrain yourself to operational limits and safetiness and all that kind of stuff. So that was the building out that kind of side of things, from numerical models to all the way up to this optimization and kind of iterating towards a solution, basically. But those are kind of distributed systems in some senses, because you work in a distributed sense with different teams. You have to integrate teams together and come to consensus. You have to then kind of create processes and workflows, we call them, but they're effectively what you call a smart contract in a blockchain world. You have a process that you want to execute, and it happens when someone triggers something, either by, loading a model into a database, or, executing some kind of change on a process system. So these kind of things are very similar in the Web3 world and the blockchain world, but they're distinct in some of the ways. A little bit more computational horsepower, and a little bit more smoke and mirrors in the oil industry. Quite a lot of it is a guess, statistics.
Yeah, I studied geology undergraduate, so I had a personal interest in that. But background's very logical and relevant. So let's talk about Gorky. Okay. Sure. I want to find out what Gorky is all about, and how have you navigated both market challenges and some internal challenges as well.
Okay, sure. So what Gorky is all about really is putting valuable computation on chain, the distributed systems, and integrating the world, as blockchain is an orchestration technology. So you can connect things together, connect systems, connect people together directly through blockchain. It obviously provides this kind of trust layer in the system. So you don't need a third party, and that's obviously where this sort of wealth of DeFi springs from. But as a distributed system, it's really very useful, because use cases like supply chain, and then all the way through that kind of supply chain thought experiment towards things like ESG, which is really, really valuable for the world. And then also things like distributed data structures, which are very powerful when you put them towards some of the challenges that you have in the world today. So, for instance, decentralized healthcare is something that's very, very useful, purely from a point of view of getting it in the hands of everyone out there, and kind of democratizing the access to kind of healthcare. You can, if you have your data records on some kind of distributed system, not only are they highly available, you can kind of access them from anywhere in the world, but your providers can kind of access that, and you have a clear delineation between where your data is and who's accessing it. But also similarly, you can eliminate the need to kind of, I mean, here in the UK, focus on one single, GP provider that is almost a postcode lottery. You can now, if you decentralize your healthcare system, you can go into any GP or pharmacist around the country and just get access to the healthcare that you need. So it's extremely valuable from that point of view. So this whole concept of decentralizing things, but also connecting things together, is where Gorky comes from. And what we're doing to address that is building a very, very powerful virtual machine that has the ability to connect to any system through its virtual machine. And what we need to do to be able to get that to work in a real sense in the blockchain world is we need to build a system that is able to execute concurrently, and is able to scale properly, but also has the requisite security models that come along with that. So we need, you need really kind of very stringent security models, and you also need the ability to do this high value compute on chain.
I want to talk about your virtual machine first, and I'm going to get back into a couple of things you said about distributed data. But let's talk about the virtual machine, right?
Sure.
So blockchain is known for having a triple problem, right?
Yes.
And always a balance between security, scaling, and speed. Some layer ones do speed really well, but they break down a lot. Others are secure, but so I believe that Gorky has solved this trilemma, from what I've seen. So how do you do it? How have you solved this triple problem?
So, well, I mean, solving the trilemma is a bold claim. I don't know if that's something that our developers would be comfortable claiming, but it's certainly what we are aiming to achieve. I mean, the trilemma itself is an extension of the classical triangle in distributed systems, which is safety, liveness, and fault tolerance, right? And it's kind of morphed into the trilemma in the blockchain world, where we kind of have speed, decentralization, and security, right? And Gorky is built from a very, very powerful programming language from the ground up, to be run as a concurrent computational model. And a lot of the power in what we're doing comes from that. So it treats data and code on chain in the same manner. So we can not only write very complex smart contracts using a very few lines of code, but we can also store data on chain because they're not treated any differently. The the computational model that we're building also allows us to kind of build quite a unique consensus model. So the consensus model is kind of works slightly differently to some of the consensus models out there, in that we kind of solve the blocks first. And that then gets us into kind of a leaderless state. So we don't have a leader in our system, and we don't have one of these systems where you kind of have to do a lottery to choose a leader and try and protect the system, the security aspect of the system, by making it really difficult to figure out who the leader is. That's kind of one of the ways that a lot of people try and address that. And so that consensus model allows us, hopefully, to build into a system that will create or eliminate one of the challenges in the system. We then have to work into security. Now, security is done in a distributed system by creating lots of different nodes. So you decentralize the problem, and you hopefully create a system that is economically unfavorable to attack, right? So hopefully when the idea then is that you're addressing security. Now, as you add more nodes to the system, in most traditional layer ones, they can start to break down or gum up because you then have this sort of leader problem where lots and lots of nodes then bottleneck into a single point where they're kind of adding blocks into the ledger. Gorky is a DAG, a block DAG. It's not really a blockchain, and therefore we have this kind of progressing front, and we're building the technology so that we can scale. And have more nodes in the system, which creates a bigger system and doesn't have the same bottleneck. So again, this kind of concept of concurrency and the concept of the programming language allows us to address this kind of leader security problem, the decentralization aspect, and then the scalability comes from us executing things concurrently, which is obviously one of the things you want to make sure you can do lots of stuff at the same time. But also kind of scaling as the network grows and the performance capacity of the network should grow at the same time. Not like some of the other blockchains where as you add more nodes, it's quite well known that they kind of start to get slower, So solving the trilemma is a bold statement, but it's one of the things that we're definitely going to try and move towards. And we're doing it through this kind of strategy of starting from the ground up from the programming language and using that as the bedrock of what we build on top of it.
It's interesting you said DAG. I think I've interviewed only one other project that was a DAG. I think that was IOTA.
Okay. Yeah.
What's the benefit of the DAG versus the benefit of the blockchain? Is there a difference?
Well, yeah, I mean, a DAG is just a chain in 2 dimensions, right? So it's a directed acyclic graph, and there's quite a lot of complex maths. Actually, one of my close friends is a very distinguished researcher in this area, and he probably will kill me for butchering my explanation of everything here. But effectively, this directed acyclic graph consists of nodes and edges effectively, and then the edges are the connections between the nodes, and basically it's just each node is the analogy of a block in a chain, right? But you can branch from these different nodes and you can kind of create, so rather than having one single block that's added on top of another block like a kind of a stack, you effectively have lots of blocks within a fringe, so they're all being executed at the same time. And the idea and what we're aiming for with a concurrent programming language is to be able to merge these blocks together that are all created at the same time or asynchronous in an asynchronous manner where you kind of allow people to just kind of go for it and they're added into this graph structure. So a fringe progresses forward with lots and lots of blocks being finalized as they go, rather than one block being added on top of the other and each one referencing just the single one previous to it. You reference all of your parent blocks, the ones that you're branching from.
That actually made sense. You didn't butcher it at all. I don't think you made it. It explained it to me, so I understand it now. So thank you.
Good. Well, good. I'm glad. Thank
you. Yeah. So I want to talk about how you achieve creating a decentralized technology for the masses, because the masses aren't ready to go into Web3. The masses are ready to still work in Web2, but how do you create that where you get people who are in Web2 and very comfortable with Web2 familiar and getting comfortable with Web3?
Yeah. So, I mean, this kind of comes back to, I think this question is related to the trilemma question in the sense that people are philosophically obsessed with solving this trilemma problem, but it's a very, very deep problem, and it's a philosophical question in a sense. I think that that's not the problem in blockchain space and the Web3 space. The problem in the Web3 space is, like you say, it's adoption, right? The problem is that people are not able to adopt it, either because the technology out there is not stable enough for them to develop on, or it's too difficult and sort of an energy required to get you to the point where it is adopted. There's also this kind of, I'm calling it a day zero problem. It's not really a day zero problem because I know that various industries have their own classification of that. But effectively, there's a lot of stuff out there that's already built and it's kind of sitting there. People are using it. People use YouTube and Google and all kinds of stuff. And they need to there's a need if you want to move into a Web3 space to bridge into Web3 technology. So you need to be able to interoperate. So some of the blockchains that are out there today that are the big guns in terms of what people use and develop on, they are very laborious to begin to develop on from scratch, but they're even worse to try to take an existing system or technology and integrate it into it. And that's one of the things that we're spending a lot of time working on at Gorky is making sure that we have the ability to integrate into existing systems. So whether that is loading in like a jar file into your smart contract that will basically call a small program and go and grab data from a SQL database, or run a bash script or something like that inside your smart contracts that allows you real interoperability with the existing world. And that hopefully brings us to a space where we can bridge people into Web3 rather than have them come along and start from scratch, which is a huge ask for a lot of industries and a lot of companies to just kind of, hey, rewrite everything in our new language. That would be madness. I don't think anyone's going to adopt that.
That's what I've been saying for years. No one listens to me. But you said the magic word. You said magic word is bridge. And that word is beginning to have a bad connotation, right? Because Web3 natives talk about bridging, and that's cool. And everybody asks me, hey, what are you bridging? And I'm not bridging anything. My definition of bridging is bringing the institutional players into, the new technology and be able to integrate. So instead of focusing on the masses, what if you focus instead on the institutional adoption, right? What remain the challenges to brick and mortar industries like energy, like the ones you're familiar with, and others to fully adopt the blockchain, and what needs to happen for them to pave the way for the global institutional adoption, with this word bridge out there getting the bad connotations and everything.
Yeah, I mean, so the large institutions that are they're sort of megaliths of industry, they move very slowly, and it's the same thing when you see a small agile company. They can do things and they act and work in a certain way, but when you have these massive multinational organizations, they kind of struggle to move into a different space quite a lot, and it's purely it's just trying to build the momentum to get them to shift. I think a lot of the industries, so in my experience in the energy industry, in the oil and gas world, they are slow to adopt new technologies. They talk about being very innovative and moving things very fast, but actually in the kind of a lot of the kind of coalface side of the oil and gas industry, for example, they're very slow. And it's for a very good reason. There's a lot of safety consciousness. I mean, we've all seen how things can go very, very wrong in the oil and gas world when, things are not safe, and that's, tragedies can happen. So when it comes to adopting new technologies, they have to see that it is safe, see that it is valuable, and see value from doing this adoption. A lot of the work for blockchain in even any industry really is as an integration tool, and we're a lot of companies nowadays need to partner with other companies when it comes to doing anything really. I mean, if you work in, if you're producing an oil and gas asset, you'll have lots of business partners, and that's a trust problem. So there's trust between the boundaries of the different companies. And basically where blockchain can help with that is it can allow the orchestration of that, the transfer of information between one organization to the other. So you kind of create a system where you can have two companies who don't necessarily have to trust each other, and the blockchain can broker the interaction between them. We've seen that there are some telecom industry or telecom companies who are using blockchain to handle their roaming because, one guy or girl has a cell phone and they move from one country to the other, or even one region from one country to another region of another country. And the cell phone coverage is different there. And blockchain can help answer that problem. So it allows people to kind of integrate more seamlessly. And that's one of the values of blockchain. In the industry side, there's a lot of cool stuff that goes on in blockchain, a lot of the real world assets and the DeFi and all the really cool, exciting stuff from that first gets people like me into blockchain. But actually, one of the interesting things that I find about blockchain is that, or Web3 in general, is that in the industry side of things, in the kind of, big world kind of applications, some of it is really very boring. I mean, supply chain is a huge use case, and it's not sexy, but it's very important.
Yeah. Actually was at a holiday party this past weekend, and a man there I talked to, he works for one of Warren Buffett's you know, companies. And I was talking to him. I said, boring is better. You don't want drama in business,
No,
you
definitely.
know. So we're going to get into drama in a little bit, but I
Sure.
want to talk, I want to talk about, actually follow up with what you said, regarding the oil and gas. And you said one of the things you create is distributed data structures. And
Hmm.
you talk about democratizing access to healthcare. What would be the benefits of democratizing access to ESG investing?
Well, so I mean, ESG is a big deal nowadays because a lot of companies are recognizing that people are interested in sustainable investment, and also ESG is quite a holistic subject. So it's, environmental, social, and governance, and there's all kinds of stuff to do with how you manage your stakeholders and how you manage your partners and business, but also from an employee point of view perspective. One of the things that a lot of companies have to report in some places is things like, how many miles do their employees travel to get to work, and how do they travel to get to work? Do they take the bus? Do they drive their car on their own? Or they cycle, that kind of thing. So all of these kind of first, second, and third class kind of contributions into your entire ESG footprint and your environmental impact is a big deal. And a lot of people, might not be comfortable giving up that data to people, or making that data public and sticking it on some kind of website for everyone to see. But what a blockchain does allow you to do is kind of create a system where you could have that data recorded, but and it would be, publicly accessible through certain channels, but you can also, maybe encrypt it, or maybe have it sort of slightly anonymized. Or you can have a way of making sure that you can report a number and say, this is our footprint. This is what we've done in the world to generate our revenue over the last year. But you can also, and you can trust that because you can see exactly where it came from. The blockchain or the block DAG gives you the way that number or process was built, through a decentralized data structure, and it's, not manipulable by any sort of other party. So you can then put it in front of governments, you can put it in front of investors, you can put it in front of the public, the shareholder or the employees, and say, look, this is where we are. And you can trust that we're being very honest with you because it comes from here, and this is, it's an open source, freely accessible piece of information. And and you can trust it, and we can't manipulate it. It was not possible for us to manipulate it, and that's a huge deal for accountability in business. I mean, a lot of people want these large companies to be more accountable to the public and the people that use them, and stakeholders are interested in openness and honesty. They want to know what they're getting into. And investors are interested in, okay, am I, more and more, am I having an impact on the environment that is positive? So looking for companies that have a good foothold on what their impact on the environment is. And that's one of the things that blockchain allows. It's kind of creates this open source technology, or open technology, that allows people to see what's happening. At the same time, you still need to give businesses the ability to, maybe anonymize where they need to, IP and all these kind of things, protect their own investments, but you also want to make sure that they're accountable in that sense.
Accountability is key. I believe you. Um, okay, so I said I was going to get into drama next, right?
Sure.
Um, there's a hype word out there. It's called AI. Um, yeah, but there's practical applications too. So, what is the intersection of AI, data structures, data analytics, and blockchain look like to you? And what benefits can we provide for humanity at this intersection?
Sure. I mean, AI is huge. It's become a general purpose technology, which is massive. It's got. I don't think there's any industry that AI is not going to touch in the next 10 years. I, we have various different projects, but one project that has a very cool use case is being able to integrate AI into systems and have AI be an integrator or a productivity tool for people, So the integration of AI and blockchain is an interesting one. I mean, AI is data hungry. That is key. I mean, AI is or machine learning, and just data science in general, the kind of overarching everything of it, is a very data hungry process. In the energy industry, in my previous jobs, I remember talking to people about how much data they had, and they were like, oh, we generate lots and lots of data. But actually, it was only a few terabytes, which is actually not even close to being lots of data, comparatively speaking. If you have any idea of the amount of data a jet engine generates per hour as it flies over the Atlantic, it's absolutely astronomical. That's huge amounts of data. So when it comes to like feeding your AI and keeping your algorithms kind of fed with information and able to adapt and change to how the world is working, that is one potential use case for blockchain, because blockchain allows us to kind of create an ownership around data. And it can be a kind of a place where you can almost tokenize data. Data is an asset now, right? So whereas gold and everyone talks about digital gold, but I mean, digital gold has been around for a very long time. It's your data. Anywhere where you use a service for free, you are the product, right? So when people are collecting your information and you're using a program or a website for free, they're using the data that you generate for them to monetize that and generate revenue. And there's a certain aspect of that is potentially a bit exploitative for some people if they're not aware of it, and if they're potentially not getting as much out of that platform as the person who's getting that data. So what Web3 allows us to do is create a system that is more democratized. You should, in theory, have more ownership over who has access to your data. And you should also be able to regulate who comes into your world, right? So one of the Gorky's kind of use cases that we're building is in the kind of marketing side of things. And having data on chain means that you can load content onto the blockchain. And if you have a simple API that basically allows a developer to sort of call content, you could create a banner ad in your app that people can just see at the bottom of their app, and you'll be paying for your fees through just being witness to a banner ad. That creates an additional revenue model for developers, and it means that they might not necessarily have to go down this kind of like immediate token launch route to generate revenue from an app, right? But it also means that the API, if the API goes in both ways, the user has the ability to maybe pay a small subscription and get rid of the ads. Some people want to do that, but some people might also want to say, well, I'll tell you what, I don't really want to see any ads. Like, let's say they're vegetarian, they don't want to see any ads to do with food products that have any animal products in them. Say, I don't want to see them. If you're mad about tennis, great, show me ads about tennis, sports shoes, these kind of things. You can create fuzzy logic, and there's a bit of an AI component there, because if you're mad about tennis, there's a good chance you want sports shoes. You're probably into, I'm going to go into a really crazy cliche here, but like sweatbands and lots and lots of white cotton sport outfits. So some fuzzy logic and some AI in there might help you sort of flesh out what gets seen, and you can kind of choose, almost like in ChatGPT, there's like this temperature parameter where you can say, well, look, I'm interested in these subjects, but I'm okay to see a bit more outside of that. So you kind of have a small component of AI integration there that says, this person likes these subjects, let's show them this one once in a while. And these kind of things can allow more targeted marketing campaigns. So it's good for the people in the companies who want to show you content, but it's also good for us because it means that we get a little bit more control over what we see. And that's very useful. I mean, marketing, there was some statistics of like I think they pay like $4 per person that views it, right? And I think they only get about 1% of the people that view something clicking through to a web page in some places, which is, that's a lot of money to be thrown around. Whereas if you can maybe target it a little bit more, it becomes a bit more efficient, you know?
I'm a fan of that word, efficiency.
Yeah.
You brought up advertisements, and you have a lot of influencers out there who are not they're not talking about process flow, they're talking about the price of cryptos, right? Yeah, yeah, I'm an efficiency guy. I build databases, I build efficient processes, and that's why I'm got into blockchain, right? Um, you know, what are the where are we at the cusp of like process breakthroughs? Because we are working towards efficiency, towards optimization, towards those breakthroughs. So, what if we focus on process flow? What do you think will be some of the revolutionary advances that we'll see in the next few years because of that?
Um, so I'm particularly excited about the, I think there's, we're using blockchain and Web3 as like a single foundation layer technology. And very in the same way we're using think like large language models as a single layer of technology. But these things, I think we're only really seeing the start of right now. You have um, already got kind of very cool integrations of large language models on top of some prompt engineering and on top of maybe another technology that allows us to kind of input some logic onto it. There are some very cool structures in the blockchain world. A lot of people are looking at kind of blockchains that are integrating with AI and allow us to sort of tokenize our data. And we're starting to see other blockchains that kind of are more open to communicating with each other. There's the whole Polkadot ecosystem, and a lot of blockchain technologies are using very similar underlying kind of libraries and technology to build things with. I feel like there's a convergence of kind of Web3, AI, and the sort of metaverse side of things. There's already a lot of people in the gaming world. I mean, gaming being a huge industry, the sort of integration of people's entertainment, and it's the time that people spend outside of work, right? So, um, the sort of metaverse kind of swelling from the ground up. We've not really seen a great deal of applied metaverse yet. There's people talk about it, people sort of saying things about it. There's a huge computational problem in there because the computational load and what people try and get metaverse to or getting metaverse to be is to operate on kind of edge devices, like on your tablet or on like these sort of smart glasses and stuff like that. There's a computational problem that we need to get to where we can kind of have this augmented reality, virtual reality world that can exist alongside of the Web3 stuff and the AI stuff that helps us kind of create everything around us. But I think we're moving towards this being a reality, and I'm excited about what Gorky's doing in terms of being able to integrate these things together and being an orchestration layer inside of that. The sort of the movement towards the metaverse becoming a reality.
Just about to ask you the follow up. What is Gorky's role in the applied metaverse, or what it's going to be?
So, I mean, it really comes down to this orchestration side of things. We want to integrate into the metaverse, and as I mentioned before, there's this problem where there are already tons and tons of stuff that exists. We look at GameFi. I mean, GameFi is one of these things where it has been around for a while and people have tried to get it off the ground, and there have been some success stories. There's been Axie Infinity and there was a lot of hype about the crypto kitties and all this kind of stuff. But the issue is that no one's ever really got to the point where they have caught the mainstream attention of something like Roblox or Minecraft or Fortnite. These are massive realities that people spend time in, and they have huge, thriving ecosystems, economies. People are trading, people are meeting, people are communicating, and they're doing it we want the metaverse to be that. Now, if we want the but we want the metaverse to be more, right? I mean, the metaverse is about other stuff like education and healthcare. There's a project here in the UK, Kubani, and they're doing education through virtual reality and Web3 technology. And I mean, I've recently had a look at a paper about the use of augmented reality and virtual reality and AI in therapy. And movement therapy and helping people who may not necessarily be able to actually physically move, augmented reality and virtual reality is a therapeutic tool. So these kind of metaverse things bleed into everything around us, into business, into healthcare, into the sort of how we govern the world around us. I'm hugely excited about DAOs, for example, these much more democratic structures that we can create and opt into and become part of. So, I think what Gorky wants to do is be part of the sort of foundation layer. When blockchain works, you shouldn't really notice you're using it, but we want to be at the point of the foundation of it, right? The integrator and orchestrator in it all.
Sounds good to me. I'm really excited about you guys' future. That sounds awesome. So I want to thank you very much for your time today, and it's been a wonderful conversation. I enjoyed it, and I have one last question. It's probably the easiest one. It's how can people find out more information about Gorky, about you, about what you guys are up to, follow you as you go? How can they do that?
Okay, so yeah, you can follow us on Twitter. We have a Gorky Network or Gorky_network. That's our Twitter handle. And you can also visit us at gorky.network, which is our website. And that you'll find out information about us there, the sort of white paper and how to contact us basically through that. So you can find me on I'm on LinkedIn, all the sort of boring old school side of things. But yeah, Twitter and our website is the best way to get hold of us. We have a Discord server as well. You can join that. We're just spinning that up, to be honest. We need to kind of the ecosystem thing is one of the things that we're spending a lot of time trying to grow at the moment. So
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time today.
no problem. Thanks for yours. Nice to meet you.